The state fire marshal walked into our Monday investor meeting with a clipboard and basically a death sentence for Lance Patterson's data center empire. I was sitting in the back corner, watching 17 years of my work about to go up in smoke. And I have to tell you, it felt pretty damn good. But let me back up and tell you how we got there. My name is Wesley Martinez. I'm 49 years old, got a lower back that clicks like a Geiger counter when it rains, and for the past 17 years, I've been the only reason half this county doesn't go dark when the weather gets nasty. You know that low electric hum that sounds like a hive of mechanical bees trapped in a refrigerator? That's the sound of $1 billion holding its breath. And it's been the soundtrack of my life. I'm standing in aisle 4 of the main server hall at what we'll call Lone Star Data, listening to cooling fans fight a Texas thunderstorm trying to tear the roof off this glorified warehouse. Outside, the sky's turning that bruised purple color that means a tornado might touch down just to ruin my Tuesday. Inside, it's 68 degrees and smells like ozone, floor wax, and cigarette smoke from the parking lot. Officially, my title was Operations Manager. Unofficially, I was the janitor of the internet, the backbone of the network, the guy who crawled into the belly of the beast when diesel generators started coughing up black smoke at 3 a.m. I'm not telling you this story because I want sympathy. I'm telling it because sometimes you have to burn the village down, and I wanted a front row seat to watch the flames. This concrete box wasn't always the backbone of the local economy. 17 years ago, it was filled with rat droppings and outdated servers that looked like Soviet submarine equipment. That was before the big blackout in 2008. You remember that one? The grid collapsed like a house of cards built by drunk toddlers. People were melting in their living rooms. Hospitals were running on fumes. I was just a senior tech then, working for Lance Patterson. Lance was the owner, a guy whose entire personality screamed Golf Pro Shop discount rack. When the blackout hit, Lance was in Cabo. I was here. I spent 3 days sleeping on a camping cot next to the backup generators, manually feeding them diesel with a funnel and a prayer. I rewired transfer switches with a flashlight clenched between my teeth while server room temperature climbed to levels that usually cook brisket. I saved the contracts, I saved the data. When the lights came back on, the county realized that while everything else failed, this ugly concrete box stayed online. That's when contracts started rolling in. The regional hospital network stores patient records here. The 911 dispatch backup system runs on rack 12. The refinery down the road that processes enough volatile chemicals to turn this town into a crater, their safety monitoring systems run through my fiber optics. I built this place, not with money. Lance provided capital, barely, but with sweat, anxiety, and missed birthdays. I know every cable in the subfloor. I know which cooling unit rattles in B-Wing because Unit 4's bearing is shot and needs grease every second Tuesday. I know the security guards' kids' names. I'm not just an employee. I'm the load-bearing wall. Standing there this morning, listening to thunder rattle the blast doors, I felt calm, the calm of competence. I checked humidity sensors, steady at 45%. I checked generator fuel levels, topped off. I was captain of a ship that never moved but traveled the world at the speed of light. I walked past the main compliance wall near the entrance. It's a boring stretch of drywall covered in framed certificates. State and federal safety certifications, insurance liability waivers. The kind of paperwork that makes your eyes glaze over faster than a Krispy Kreme donut. But if you looked closely, and nobody ever did, especially not Lance, you'd see one name typed over and over in the responsible operator field, Wesley Martinez, license TX 49210. That's me. In the eyes of the state of Texas, the Department of Homeland Security Critical Infrastructure Division, and insurance underwriters, I am this building. Lance owns the bricks and land. I own the reliability. If this place catches fire, the fire marshal doesn't call Lance. He calls me. If the 911 system goes down and someone dies because an ambulance didn't show up, the subpoena comes to my house. I stared at my name on that wall, framed in cheap plastic. It felt heavy today. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the fact that Lance had called a mysterious all-hands meeting for 10 a.m. He usually only shows up when he wants to show off his new truck or complain about electricity costs, as if I can negotiate with physics. "Hey, Wesley," a voice called out. It was Kevin, one of my lead techs. Good kid, tattoos up to his neck, looks like he plays bass in a prison metal band, but he can splice fiber optic cable faster than a spider spins a web. The boss man is here. And he brought the prince. My stomach dropped. The prince was our nickname for Bryce, Lance's son. Bryce had been away at university for 6 years, earning a 4-year business degree in what I assumed was beer pong and failing intro to reality. Last time I saw him, he was 19, drunk, trying to mine Bitcoin on a laptop he'd plugged into a critical medical server. I had to physically unplug him before he violated HIPAA laws and crashed the ER database. "Is he wearing a suit?" I asked Kevin, taking a sip of my coffee. It was cold and tasted like battery acid and regret. Worse, Kevin grimaced. "He's wearing a fleece vest and loafers with no socks." Patagonia vest or generic corporate giveaway? Patagonia. Branding visible from space. God help us, I muttered. Something was about to break. I could feel it. I walked toward the conference room, my steel-toed boots clacking against the raised floor tiles. The server lights blinked their rhythmic green pulses in the dark. A digital heartbeat. I'd kept alive for nearly 2 decades. I patted the side of server rack 7 as I passed, a habit like scratching a dog behind the ears. Good girl. Keep running. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time I'd walk that aisle as the person in charge. The storm outside was nothing compared to the Category 5 stupidity waiting for me behind those glass walls. I adjusted my tool belt. Yes, I wear it to meetings. It intimidates the sales guys. And pushed the door open. Lance was sitting at the head of the table, looking like a tomato about to burst. He was grinning that wide, fleshy grin he uses when he thinks he's about to bestow a great gift upon the peasants. Next to him sat Bryce, who looked like he'd been generated by an AI prompted with arrogant tech bro who listens to motivational podcasts. He was scrolling on his phone, not even looking up as staff filed in. Kid smelled like expensive cologne and unearned confidence. "Wesley, come in, Lance boomed, waving a hand that sported a gold pinky ring. "Grab a seat. We've got big news. Huge news for the family." I sat down, crossing my arms. The air conditioning in the conference room was always too cold, a sterile chill that seeped into your bones. I looked around the table. Kevin was there, looking nervous. Nicole from billing was chewing her cuticle. The atmosphere was tense, vibrating with the unspoken knowledge that wealthy people only gather workers for 2 reasons: to fire them or to tell them to work harder for the same money. Lance started, leaning back and lacing his fingers over his stomach. "As you all know, this place is my baby. But babies grow up, and so do sons." He clapped a hand on Bryce's shoulder. Bryce flinched slightly, then flashed a blindingly white smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Bryce here has finally finished his MBA, Lance announced, beaming. "Top of his class at..." Well, he trailed off. "And he's ready to take the reins. He's got fresh ideas, modern ideas. He's going to take Lone Star data into the future." I felt a prickle of irritation. The future? I was currently keeping the present from melting down. What kind of future? Bryce finally looked at me. His eyes were empty, like windows in a house nobody lives in. "Optimization, Wesley," he said, pronouncing my name like it was a brand of generic detergent. "Synergy. Cloud-native pivoting. We're sitting on a goldmine of legacy infrastructure that needs to be disrupted." Disrupted. The favorite word of people who've never had to fix anything in their lives. "We host the county 911 system, Bryce," I said, keeping my temper on a leash. "We don't disrupt. We sustain. We're the boring concrete foundation that keeps the house from falling down." Bryce chuckled, a dry, condescending sound. "That's the old way of thinking. That's utility thinking. We need platform thinking." Lance jumped in, sensing the friction. Now. Bryce has a vision, and to help him execute that vision, we're making some structural changes." He looked at me. The grin faltered for a microsecond, then returned, plastered on with sweat and delusion. "Wesley's been a rock, a total rock. But Bryce is going to take over as Director of Operations, effective immediately." The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of servers through the glass and blood rushing in my ears. "Director of Operations," I repeated slowly. "My job." "We're not firing you," Lance said quickly, holding up his hands. "God, no. We need your memory. You're the historian. We're moving you to a new role, Senior Compliance Specialist. You'll handle the paperwork, the documentation. Help Bryce get up to speed, organize the files, make sure audits are tidy. Compliance specialist. He was putting me out to pasture, taking the keys to the engine room and handing me a coloring book. You want me to file papers? I said, rage starting to simmer in my gut. It's a vital role, Bryce piped up. Data governance is huge right now. Plus, I need you to document all your tribal knowledge. Get it out of your head and into the cloud so we can scale. Tribal knowledge. Corporate speak for everything you learned through suffering that I want to steal so I can fire you later. I looked at Lance. 17 years. I'd missed my daughter's high school graduation because a transformer blew. I'd spent Christmas Eve in the subfloor chasing a water leak. I'd saved his worthless hide more times than he had hairs on his head. Now I was being shoved into a corner so his son could play CEO. Something snapped inside me, quiet, like a bolt shearing off deep inside a machine. Okay, I said. Lance blinked. Okay? Okay, I repeated. I forced a smile. It felt like baring teeth at a predator. If that's the direction you want to go, I'll handle the paperwork. Fantastic. Lance slapped the table. I knew you'd be a team player. Bryce, you're in charge. Wesley will show you the ropes. Bryce checked his watch. Great. I have a lunch meeting, but maybe you can email me a summary of what you do all day. Keep it brief. Bullet points. I looked at the storm raging outside the window. I looked at the compliance wall where my name, Wesley Martinez, responsible operator, was the only thing standing between these idiots and a federal lawsuit. Sure, Bryce, I said, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. I'll get right on the paperwork. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to do exactly what they asked. I was going to do the paperwork, every single page, and when I was done, they were going to wish I'd just burned the building down instead. The meeting ended with a whimper of HR handouts. A nervous woman from Human Resources, which consisted of one lady named Michelle who mostly planned the Christmas potluck and tracked PTO, slid a packet across the table. It was thick, printed on cheap paper still warm from the copier. The title page read, Senior Compliance Specialist Support Position. Support, that was the dagger, corporate equivalent of telling a brain surgeon they're now in charge of washing scalpels. I really think this is a better use of your bandwidth, Bryce said, standing up and buttoning his fleece vest with jerky, aggressive motions like he was armoring up for battle against productivity. I want to focus on high-level strategy. You can handle the weeds. The weeds are what keep the power on, Bryce, I said. He laughed, waving dismissively. That's legacy thinking. Automation, Wesley. We're going to automate the workflows. I saw a TED talk about self-healing grids. Why are we paying guys to watch gauges when an API can do it? Kevin looked at me with panic in his eyes. He knew. He knew that our grid was held together by spit, duct tape, and custom patches I'd written in 2012 that no API on Earth could interpret. If Bryce tried to automate the cooling tower sequence, he'd likely cause a pressure explosion that would mist the parking lot with glycol. Just read the packet, Wesley, Lance said, checking his phone. We've got a lunch reservation at the steakhouse. Bryce is treating. Corporate card, of course. He winked. Oh, and by the way, Lance continued, those new growth contracts, the ones with the regional logistics hub, they absolutely loved the tour you gave their auditors last month. They kept mentioning how safe they felt knowing you were personally overseeing the transition. I froze. They signed? Signed, sealed, delivered, Lance beamed. Biggest contract since the hospital. That's why we need Bryce at the helm to manage this new scale. But hey, your name's all over the safety addendum, so they're happy. It's a win-win. My name. Again. They'd sold clients on my expertise, then removed me from operations. So, I said slowly, you sold them on my safety record, my operational protocols, and my personal oversight. And now you're removing me from operations. Bryce rolled his eyes. You're still here, aren't you? You're the specialist. If we have a question, we'll ask. Don't be so dramatic. It's just a title change. Actually, I started. Clients care very much about... Let's not get bogged down in semantics, Lance interrupted, standing up. We're celebrating. My new office turned out to be a converted storage closet near the loading dock. No window, just a vent that rattled and smelled like diesel exhaust. My desk was a folding table. My chair was fabric with a stain that looked suspiciously like taco sauce. I sat there for a long time, listening to muffled sounds of the data center through the wall. I could hear the hum of transformers. I could feel vibration in the floor. It was like being locked out of your own house while watching a stranger set up a meth lab in your living room. The revenge was about to begin. I opened the HR packet. It was insulting. A pay cut commensurate with reduced responsibilities and a list of duties that included organizing historical files, digitizing paper logs, and assisting the director with ad hoc scheduling. Ad hoc scheduling. I was going to be his secretary. My phone buzzed. Text. From Kevin. He's asking for the passwords to the root admin accounts. Says he wants to audit the user privileges. Wesley, he doesn't even know Linux. What do I do? I stared at the screen. My instinct was to run back there, push Bryce into a server rack, and lock the console to save them from themselves. But then I looked at the compliance specialist job description again. Duty number 4. Maintain accurate records of all operational protocols and personnel certifications. Lance had said the clients loved the safety stuff. He said they used my name. I took a deep breath. The rage was cooling into something harder, sharper. It was turning into a plan. I typed back to Kevin. Give them to him. Give him everything he asks for. Document that he asked. Document that you gave them. Are you serious? He'll brick the system. Not today, he won't. Just do it. And Kevin, don't fix anything unless he explicitly tells you to in writing. I put the phone down. I looked at the stack of cardboard boxes in the corner labeled Old Records, Do Not Shred. Lance had dumped them here years ago, telling me to deal with this junk eventually. I stood up and walked over to the first box. I ripped the tape off. Dust motes danced in the fluorescent light. Inside were binders. Thick, dusty binders with labels like FEMA Grant 2010, State Critical Infrastructure Filing 2015, and Hazardous Material Handling Protocols. I pulled out the FEMA binder. This was from the rebuild after Hurricane Ike. We'd received a massive federal grant to harden the facility against disasters, millions of dollars to upgrade the grid connection and install military-grade generators. I flipped it open. There, on page 4, was the key personnel clause. Grant eligibility is contingent upon the continuous employment and oversight of a state-licensed master infrastructure operator level 4 or higher, designated as the primary point of responsibility. Any change in key personnel must be reported to the Oversight Committee within 72 hours, potentially triggering a compliance review and funding clawback. I ran my finger over the signature at the bottom. Wesley Martinez. I opened the next binder, the insurance policy for the hospital servers. Clause 14B, continuity of expertise. Insured facility guarantees that all critical life safety systems are under the direct supervision of a certified operator with a minimum of 10 years experience in medical data continuity. Signature, Wesley Martinez. I sat back on my taco sauce chair. The humiliation in my chest began to recede, replaced by the cold, calculating hum of a technician diagnosing a fatal system error. They hadn't just demoted me. They'd inadvertently violated the foundational legal structure of their entire business. Lance thought my name on the wall was just decoration, like a hang-in-there-kitty poster. He didn't realize it was the load-bearing beam. He wanted me to do paperwork. Oh, I was going to do the paperwork. I was going to read every single line of fine print in this damp, windowless closet. I was going to map the spiderweb of liability they'd trapped themselves in. I turned on the ancient computer they'd left on the desk. It groaned to life, fans sounding like a dying jet engine. I cracked my knuckles. Step 1. Inventory. I needed to know exactly how much they owed the name Wesley Martinez. As I started typing, I heard a loud thump from the other side of the wall, followed by the muffled sound of collision. Then Bryce's voice yelling, "Who put a ladder there? Someone move this junk!" He'd tripped over the ladder to the Halen gas suppression system. If he'd hit the release valve, it would have dumped $50,000 worth of gas into the room and sucked oxygen out of the air. He'd missed it by inches, this time. I opened a new spreadsheet. I titled it Exit Strategy. And then I started to work. Not for them, for me. The next morning, I arrived at work to find the break room replaced. The vending machine that dispensed lukewarm Mountain Dew and stale honey buns was gone. In its place was a gleaming chrome espresso machine that looked like it belonged on the International Space Station, and a basket of organic fruit already attracting fruit flies. "It's about wellness," Bryce announced. He was standing in the control room holding a tiny cup of espresso that looked ridiculous in his hands. He'd swapped the vest for a slim-fit dress shirt unbuttoned one button too far. We need to fuel our bodies if we want to fuel the data economy. Kevin was standing by the console, looking like he wanted to murder someone with a crimping tool. He caught my eye and subtly tilted his head toward the main monitoring screen. I looked up. The temperature set points for the server halls had been changed. For 17 years, we'd run the halls at 68 degrees F. Conservative, sure. Google runs hotter, but our equipment is a mix of new blades and old iron that gets cranky if it sweats. The screen now read 78 degrees F. I walked over, boots heavy on the floor. "Bryce," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Why are the halls set to 78? He smiled, that condescending tilt of the lips. "Efficiencies, Wesley. I read a white paper from Facebook. They run their centers warmer to save on cooling costs. We're wasting thousands a month chilling this place like a meat locker. I'm optimizing the OpEx." I took a deep breath. Facebook designs their own custom servers to handle heat. We're running legacy Dell racks from 2016 and the 911 dispatch mainframe, which is essentially a toaster oven with a hard drive. If you run them at 78 in a Texas July, inlet temperature will spike to 90 in the hot aisles. "It's fine," he dismissed me, turning back to the espresso machine. "The sensors will alert us if it gets critical. We need to be lean." "Lean?" I repeated. "Okay. Just so I can update the compliance log. You're overriding the manufacturer's recommended operating range to save on electricity?" "I'm modernizing our sustainability profile," he corrected. "Write that down." "Got it," I said. Pulled out my notepad and wrote, 9:15 a.m. Director Bryce increases temp to 78 degrees F against advice of technical staff, cited Facebook white paper as justification for ignoring Dell thermal specs. Later that afternoon, the real test came. I was in my closet office, scanning the original deed to the property. Fun fact, Lance put the land in a separate LLC to dodge taxes, which might be interesting later, when the floor vibrated. It was a deep, rhythmic thrumming, the kind you feel in your teeth. I knew that feeling. It was generator number 3 doing its weekly exercise cycle. Every Wednesday at 2 p.m., the system automatically fires up the massive diesel engines to make sure they work. It runs for 30 minutes, then shuts down. Suddenly, the vibration stopped. Abruptly, like a heart attack. I waited for the restart. Nothing. I grabbed my radio out of force of habit, remembered I was a specialist, I put it down, I sat on my hands, do not fix it, do not fix it. 2 minutes later, my door flew open. It was Kevin. He was pale. He shut it off. Kevin gasped. "Who?" "Bryce." He walked out to the generator yard and hit the emergency manual stop on number 3 while it was spooling up. "Why?" I stood up, forgetting my vow of silence. He said it was noise pollution during his conference call with investors. Said we don't need to run them every week, that once a month is enough to save diesel. My blood ran cold. "Kevin, if you don't run those engines weekly, the seals dry out, the fuel separates, and if you emergency stop a diesel engine under load without a cool-down cycle, you can warp the cylinder heads." "I know," Kevin yelled. "I told him that. He told me to stop being a mechanic and start being a visionary." Warped cylinder head meant a $40,000 repair and 3 weeks of downtime. If we lost main power during those 3 weeks, we'd be down to N+1 redundancy. If another generator failed, the hospital would go dark. "Did you log it?" I asked. "What? Did you log it?" No. I came straight here." "Go back to the console," I ordered, my voice turning into steel. "Open an incident ticket. Log exactly this. Director manually executed e-stop on generator 3 during active load test to reduce noise levels. Potential damage to cylinder heads unassessed. Routine maintenance schedule canceled by director order. Do it now." Kevin stared at me. "Wesley, he's going to break it all." "I know," I said, sitting back down and picking up my scanning wand. "That's why we need the receipts. Go." Kevin ran out. I sat there shaking. This wasn't funny anymore. This wasn't just office politics incompetence. This was negligence. I looked at the phone on my desk. I picked up the receiver and dialed a number I knew by heart. It wasn't Lance. It wasn't Bryce. It was Mason, the facilities manager at the regional hospital network. We'd shared beers at industry conferences for a decade. He trusted me. "Lone Star Data, this is the archives," I said when he answered. "Wesley?" Mason's voice was warm. "Archives? What the hell are..." You doing there? I thought you were running the show. Changes, Mason. Exciting changes, I said, keeping my voice bright and fake. Listen, I'm just updating our contact logs for the new director, Bryce. I wanted to confirm your current emergency escalation protocols. Sure, same as always. Call me, then the CIO. Great, I said. And just a heads up, since I'm in a non-operational role now, all those automated alerts about generator health and thermal variances, they're going to Bryce now. I won't be verifying them before they get to you. There was silence on the line. Long, heavy silence. Wait, you're not verifying the alerts? Nope. I'm strictly paperwork now. Bryce is streamlining the process. He's very focused on efficiencies, like reducing generator test cycles. Another silence. He's reducing the test cycles? Mason's voice lost its warmth. It became sharp. Just to save diesel, it's very green. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure you knew to look out for emails from Bryce Patterson at Lone Star Data. Have a great day, Mason. I hung up before he could ask more. I'd just lit the fuse. Mason wasn't going to let that slide. The hospital didn't care about green initiatives. They cared about keeping ventilators running. The dominoes were starting to fall. By Friday, the data center smelled like hot plastic and impending doom. The temperature in the cold aisles was creeping up to 74 degrees. The servers were spinning their fans at maximum RPM, screaming like jets taking off inside a library. Bryce was walking around with noise-canceling headphones, oblivious to the mechanical agony surrounding him. I was in my closet, digitizing a stack of invoices from 2018, when Lance walked in. He looked flushed, sweat on his forehead. Hot in here, huh? He chuckled, wiping his brow with a silk handkerchief. It's 78 degrees, Lance. Physics doesn't negotiate, I said, not looking up from the scanner. Right. Bryce is tuning the parameters. It'll settle out. He sat on my folding table, making it groan. So, Wesley, we have a little hiccup. A hiccup? Insurance renewals. And the state certification for the fire suppression system. Apparently the paperwork needs a certified master operator signature. Bureaucracy, right? He slid a stack of papers across the table. They were flagged with little yellow sticky notes that said, "Sign here." I looked at the top document. It was an attestation to the state fire marshal that the Halon system had been inspected and was fully operational. The system Bryce almost tripped over with a ladder. So you want me to sign? I said, picking up the pen. As responsible operator? Exactly. Just for this quarter, until Bryce gets his paperwork sorted. You're still an employee. Technically, you still have the license. Help us out for old time's sake. We're family. I looked at the paper. If I signed this and there was a fire and the system failed because Bryce had fired the maintenance vendor, which I suspected he had, I would be the one going to jail for negligence. Not Lance, not Bryce, me. They weren't just using my past work. They were trying to mortgage my future freedom to cover their present incompetence. I need to review these, I said, putting the pen down. Review? It's standard boilerplate. You wrote half of it. Lance's smile tightened. Come on, Wesley, don't be difficult. The investors are coming Monday. I need a clean dashboard. I'll have it on your desk by 4, I lied. Lance hesitated, then patted my shoulder. Good man. I knew we could count on you. We're all going to be rich, Wesley. Just ride the wave. He left. I stared at the papers. I felt a cold rage that was cleaner and sharper than anything I'd felt before. It was the clarity of a sniper adjusting for windage. I didn't sign it. Instead, I took a red Sharpie. On the signature line, I drew a small, precise picture of a middle finger. Then I shredded the document, but I wasn't done. I needed to make sure they couldn't forge it. I opened the digital file on the server, the PDF template they used. I opened it in a hex editor and corrupted the header data just enough so it would look fine as a thumbnail but would crash any printer that tried to print it. Then I sent an email to the state fire marshal's office. A friendly inquiry from my personal email. Subject, clarification on operator status, Lone Star Data. To whom it may concern, I am writing to formally update my employment status. As of Tuesday, I have been reassigned to a clerical role and no longer have operational oversight or authority at the Lone Star facility. Please advise on the necessary forms to remove my license from the site's active compliance roster immediately. I hit send. That email was a tactical nuke. The fire marshal doesn't play around. Once they knew the site had no licensed operator, the clock would start ticking. 72 hours to fix it, or they shut the building down. Monday was going to be a bloodbath, and I had a front row seat. Monday morning, day of the big investor presentation. The parking lot was full of rental cars, suits everywhere. Lance was running around like a headless chicken, adjusting his tie every 5 seconds. Bryce was wearing a full suit, looking sweaty and manic. "Wesley," Lance grabbed my arm as I walked in. "Did you sign the fire forms? They were on your desk." "I did," I said. True. The blank envelope was on his desk. Great. Great. "Listen, stick around the conference room. If they ask any technical questions and Bryce gets stuck, just jump in. Smoothly, you know." "Smoothly," I agreed. Like a well-oiled machine. I walked into the conference room. It was packed. The investors, a group of venture capital guys from Austin who looked like they'd never touched a tool in their lives, were sitting on one side. Lance and Bryce were on the other. I sat in the back in the support chair. Bryce stood up. He loaded his PowerPoint. The first slide said, "Lone Star Data, Disrupting the Legacy." "Gentlemen," Bryce started, his voice cracking slightly, "welcome to the future." He clicked to the next slide. It was a graph showing projected savings. "By optimizing our cooling to industry-leading standards, we've reduced energy spend by 15% in just 1 week, Bryce bragged. One of the investors raised his hand. "Quick question. Operational logs show inlet temperature of 79 degrees this morning. Dell's warranty voids at 80. Isn't that cutting it close?" Bryce froze. He looked at me. I smiled. I didn't say a word. I just opened a bottle of water. Very loudly. Crackle, crackle. Bryce stammered. That's a sensor error. Legacy sensors. We're replacing them." "And the generator maintenance?" another investor asked. "We saw a reduction in fuel costs. Does that mean you're running fewer tests?" "We're running smarter tests," Bryce said, sweating now. The door opened. Everyone turned. It wasn't catering. It was a man in a blue windbreaker with a badge on his chest, State Fire Marshal. Behind him was Mason, and behind Mason was a process server holding a stack of legal papers. "Lance Patterson?" the marshal barked. Lance stood up, pale as a sheet. "Yes. We're in a meeting." "I'm shutting you down," the marshal said, stepping into the room. "We received notice that your responsible operator has withdrawn. You are operating a critical infrastructure facility without a licensed supervisor. You have 60 minutes to comply." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan. Lance looked at the marshal, then he looked at Bryce, then slowly, terrifyingly, he looked at me. "Wesley," he whispered. I stood up. I smoothed out my Carhartt pants. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, "it's Mr. Martinez, and I believe my exit interview is overdue." The silence was heavy enough to bottle. The fire marshal, a guy named Hunter who looked like he ate concrete for breakfast, stood with his arms crossed. The investors were looking at their phones, probably texting their lawyers. Hunter, Buddy, Lance walked around the table, arms open. "There's been a misunderstanding. Wesley, Mr. Martinez, is right here. He's our senior. He's here." He turned to me, eyes pleading. "Wesley, tell him. Tell him you're still the responsible operator. It's just a title change, right?" This was it. The moment. "Actually, Lance," I said, stepping forward, "I'm not. I'm the compliance specialist. My job description, which Bryce wrote and you signed, explicitly states my duties are administrative. I have no operational authority. I cannot authorize maintenance. I cannot oversee safety protocols, and therefore I cannot be the licensed operator of record." "But you're here," Lance hissed. "Say you're doing it. We can fix the paperwork later." "That would be fraud, Lance," I said sweetly. "And I don't look good in orange." Hunter stepped forward. "Mr. Patterson, if Mr. Martinez is not in charge of the life safety systems, who is? Do you have another level 4 operator on site?" Lance looked at Bryce. "Bryce, you took the course, right?" Bryce turned green. "I watched the videos, but I didn't take the exam yet. The website was down." "The website was down," Hunter repeated flatly. "You're running a Tier 3 data center hosting 911 dispatch, and your qualification is the website was down." Mason cleared his throat. This constitutes a material breach of the hospital service agreement. We're pulling the data, moving to the new facility down the road, effective immediately. You can't do that, Bryce squeaked. You had a contract, Mason corrected. Now you have a liability. The investors were standing up now, collecting their briefcases. One of them looked at Lance. Mr. Patterson, expect a call from our legal department. They walked out. Hunter looked at his watch. You have 1 hour to safely power down before we cut the main breaker. If you don't have a licensed operator, you don't have power. That's the law. I looked at Kevin, who was standing by the door. Kevin, I said, you want a job? Where? With me. And Andrea. Starting salary is 20% more than what you make here. I'm in, Kevin said, ripping off his Lone Star ID badge and tossing it on the floor. Nicole? I asked the billing specialist. Take me with you, she whispered. I turned back to Lance. He was sitting in his chair, head in his hands. The empire was crumbling. I'm done here, I said. The words tasted like champagne. The walk from the conference room to my truck was only 50 yards, but it felt like walking across the moon. Behind me, chaos was erupting. I could hear Bryce yelling at the fire marshal, a strategy that has literally never worked. I could hear Lance on the phone, screaming at someone who was about to charge him $500 an hour to tell him he was screwed. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw the lights in the lobby flicker. Then the exterior floodlights cut out. Hunter had pulled the main breaker. Lone Star Data was dead. It's been 3 months since the Great Texas Data Massacre. Lone Star Data is currently a Spirit Halloween store. Lance declared bankruptcy and moved to Florida. Bryce is trying to become a lifestyle influencer on TikTok, getting about 12 views per video. As for me, I'm sitting in the control room of Tech Core 1, the new facility. The floors are white anti-static tiles. The servers are brand new blades that hum in perfect harmony. The temperature is a crisp 68 degrees. Kevin is the floor manager. Nicole runs billing. We absorbed 95% of Lone Star's clients. The transition was seamless because, well, I had the passwords. So here I am, 49 years old, former tech turned director of operations. I spend my evenings listening to ASMR videos of server fans spinning up. It soothes me. It sounds like money. It sounds like competence. The other day, a new intern asked me what my secret to success was. I looked at him, took a drag of my cigarette and said, "Kid, never let them turn you into paperwork, and always, always know where the manual kill switch is." He nodded, terrified. I went back to my screens, all green, all stable. I own the lights now, and nobody, not a single soul, is ever going to turn them off without asking me first.